So, ladies and gentlemen, is a man known for his down-to-earth attitude, which of course is quite refreshing. And of course, with a childlike curiosity and a stubbornness of a man, he went out to make the most appreciated chauffeur service here in Dubai. Of course, I'm talking about Magnus Olsson, CEO of Careem. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome him to the stage. Hello, Magnus. We are basically going to break this, Magnus, into 4 sections, okay? I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about Careem.
Okay.
Then I'm going to dig a bit deeper, find out about the childhood inspirations. And then, of course, we're going to go on to the present business success and then ask if you've got any advice for our audience, other entrepreneurs. Now, before we start, let me ask you, did your dad ever give you any advice?
I remember two advice from my dad.
Okay.
One was when I came home with my first grades from school, which were very good. And he said, that's a good start.
You know, that wasn't all of our experience.
Yeah. Second one was when the internet had started coming and you had to access it through the old dial-up modem. And I was occupying the phone line in the house day and night, so no one could call us. And I finally had to sign up for my own private phone line at the age of 15. So I couldn't even, the equivalent of the Etisalat didn't allow a 15-year-old to get his own phone line. But at that time, my dad said, learning is going to become close to irrelevant, but whoever can find in all the information that is going to be available is going to be successful.
Yeah. Well, Magnus, this is a true story, because at the age of 20, when I first set up my first business, I decided to turn to my dad, brilliant military man, a little bit of an oracle. And I sent him a contract. And I said, Dad, what are your thoughts? And imagine his reply. It read, darling, do check your spelling. So that's how my business career started. Now, of course, we know you for Careem. So tell us, what was the inspiration? How did it all begin?
Yeah, so the story of Careem, you know, I'm a Swedish guy. I had come to the Middle East about 10 years ago to Dubai as a consultant and enjoyed life working as a consultant in the region. It's tremendously exciting to work in a place that is growing so fast and there's so many opportunities. But about 5 years ago, life took a turn and I had a brain bleeding that almost threw me off my feet. And I had to go to the States to have a couple of, I call them brain upgrades. I went from Magnus 1.0 to 2.0. And that really gave me an opportunity to reflect about life.
Yes, I'm sure.
And had a couple of realizations. You know, life is short. I have to find my purpose. And there is no place for fear. So I came back with my new brain. And I left my exciting and comfortable corporate life. And I set out on a path to find something meaningful.
Wow.
Yeah.
Can we all have the name of the surgeon?
Yeah.
Clearly there was an insert there.
Peter, he's great.
Now, many of us have heard you calling your drivers captains.
Yes.
What's the origin of that?
So, in the process of starting Careem, we were looking at many different opportunities. We were looking for something that could be meaningful and big. So we looked at what is meaningful. We felt that education is meaningful,
yes.
Healthcare is meaningful, providing food for people is meaningful. Driving a car did not feel very meaningful. So when we actually came in contact with the idea of building a car booking service for the business travelers, we were not very excited at first. But then we realized that maybe this can still be a vehicle to drive something positive in the region. And that's also why we called it Careem. You know, Careem in Arabic means generous. And on that, you know, the first thing we did on the first day of Careem, me and my co-founder Mudassir, was that we wrote down the values of Careem. And amongst them was that we want to be Careem, we want to be generous to our customers, to our captains, and to our colleagues. And the captains, who from the beginning we actually called them drivers, but then about a year into the journey, it evolved into captains. It really comes from how we see them. Many times, drivers in taxi companies, in limousine companies, were not traditionally looked or very well regarded or well taken care of or well respected. And we felt that we really wanted to change that because, you know, without them we wouldn't have a business.
Yeah.
We have an app and we have a lot of technology and all the cool stuff, but at the end of the day you're sitting in a car with a captain. And 90% of your experience depends on how that captain is treating you.
Absolutely.
So we said they are as important as a pilot on an Emirates flight, so let's call them a captains.
I like that. And you know, Magnus, at the end of the day, I think you've hit on a very important thing, and that is that our businesses are our teams.
Yes.
And I think if they feel valued, they're going to remain, aren't they? And they're going to put their whole heart and soul and conscientiousness into building our brands.
Yeah, so for us, you know, in our model, we actually don't employ captains ourselves, but we're working with licensed limousine companies that have captains and cars. So for us, they're not even our direct employees, and still we felt that we need to really treat them as being part of the family.
Yeah.
Many of the captains that came on board when we started in Dubai 4.5 years ago, you know, we still see them. They come to our office, they tell us that you need to change the app like this, or you need to do a bit more advertising in Jumeirah Village Triangle because there's not a lot of customers from there. They really feel and operate and behave like owners.
So because they feel valued,
yes,
they are buying in
completely
to your future success.
Yes, completely.
I love this.
Yeah.
Now, in light of the competitors in the market, what is Careem going to be doing in the way of expansion? Are we going to be seeing 1 million new captains?
Yes, so, you know, it's been 4 years since we started. We have expanded from Dubai as the hub to 11 countries and 50 cities, from Morocco to Pakistan. And we have about 150,000 captains that work on the platform. But this is just the beginning. We have much bigger dreams and aspirations. In the next 2 years, we want to create 1 million jobs in the region.
Oh, wonderful. Yeah, absolutely.
And there is still a lot of countries and cities in the region we are not in. We are very excited about what we call our region. From Morocco to Pakistan with Turkey, 700 million people,
yeah,
400 million people living in the cities. This is massive. So we still have a lot of work to do.
Yeah. Now, just by a show of hands, how many of you have actually used Careem services? Show of hands, how many of you have used Careem services? I'm so pleased to see your wife's hand up. That's always a good sign.
She almost had to be a captain one day when we were out of captains as well.
I think that's superb. Keep it in the family. Now, let's have a little look at your early beginnings. I'm interested in knowing about the young Magnus. So what kind of childhood embodied you? And what kind of character were you within and outside of school? Were you, I mean, you've already said that your grades were quite good, so immediately you differentiate from myself.
So I was a super geek. Yeah. So, and I think from a very young age, my big idols were the likes of Steve Jobs or other big tech entrepreneurs. I read computer instruction manuals for bedtime reading. These big ones, you know.
That would certainly get you to sleep.
Microsoft Windows 3.1 instruction manual. And I remember, again, from a very early age, I tried to dress like a businessman. So I was wearing a suit.
What age are we looking at?
To school. We're talking about maybe 13.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I was really, you know, the archetype of a geek.
Well, my 12-year-old niece tells me that the in thing in Britain is now dating geeks. So actually, you were just a little ahead of yourself.
Yes.
Now, you've mentioned Steve Jobs being an influencer. Were there actual homegrown influencers in that young childhood of yours? Was it a teacher? Was it a community worker?
So I think the aspiration to always work hard came from home. And really my biggest driving force throughout life has been curiosity.
Yes.
And I tell people that I think that is the most powerful driving force you can have.
Yeah.
And whatever that curiosity takes you, for me it was into computers and software and early internet, and but it wasn't any one person in particular, more than the ones I could read about on the internet.
Yes, okay. I mean, Roger Ram was talking earlier about the fact that his own success had been attributed down to jolly hard work. So I think that you would probably agree with him.
Yes.
Now, prior to Kareem, there was another business. What was it?
So this was a world-famous IT consulting company that I started when I was 15. At that time, many of you might remember Anderson Consulting. They subsequently became Accenture. So when I was looking for a name, I thought if you can call it Anderson Consulting, it can be Olsson Solutions. So I started Olsson Solutions. And we were basically a small IT house, or I was the small IT house really, serving SMEs. Because the interesting things with SMEs, and I think this is very much in the discussion here tonight as well, even if you're a small company, IT and telecom is super critical for your business success.
And growing bigger.
Yes. But when you're small, you cannot afford to go to the IBMs or the big EMC guys and buy $1 million worth of systems.
Yeah.
So I think the small SME IT consultancy world is quite interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when we're talking about this particular region, have you come up against any cultural challenges?
So I think the interesting part is that, particularly when we go to our investors, and we've been doing a lot of road shows to get investors to invest in Kareem, and we have to sell the region. And in that pitch, we say the pitch that this is super exciting. From Morocco to Pakistan, 700 million people, smartphone penetration is higher than China, internet usage is among the highest in the world, etc., etc.
And they say...
But when you look a little bit under the surface, there is no such thing as a region. There is 20 individual countries with separate legal systems, typically separate currencies, separate regulators, etc. So, and to some extent separate cultures as well. You know, when we run Kareem in Egypt, what is top of mind of our customers and captains is traffic. When we operate Kareem in Pakistan, what's top of mind is safety.
Yeah.
And when we operate Kareem in Saudi Arabia, top of mind is how do you create a product that is culturally sensitive to the local culture.
So again, highlighting that need to really know your regions and the target audience and their requirements.
Yeah, and it's also exciting to be in Dubai. We are, out of 800 people, I think 200 are in Dubai, and we have, I think, something like 35 nationalities. So the fact that Dubai is such an incredible melting pot that is the culture of Dubai.
Yes, sure. So that leads me on beautifully to my next question, because how do you define the entrepreneurial environment here in Dubai and wider in the UAE?
So I think it's fantastic to see what has happened over the last, basically since Kareem started 4.5 years ago. when we started, there was very few accelerators, incubators, or things to support. They existed, but there were not a lot of them. And I remember when we started, and we wanted to own Careem ourselves, so we opened up in Dubai Media City. We got the cheapest office we could find in Shatta Tower. We're still in Shatta Tower. But we still had to pay quite some money just to get started. Today, with the likes of Turn 8 and Astrolabs and Flat 6 Labs, you know, most of them are in Dubai, but also in other parts of the UAE, Abu Dhabi, Ras Al Khaimah. It has gotten a lot easier to get started, a lot easier.
Yeah, it was quite interesting actually, because recently I was hosting the British explorer, Adrian Hayes, and he coined an expression which I thought was lovely, and he was talking about Dubai's can-do attitude, and that being quite far removed from our own British upbringing. You know, where success shouldn't really be spoken about because that could be boasting. So he kept demonstrating that, you know, Dubai had this can-do attitude, that it really embraces and encourages entrepreneurialism. Do you agree? I'm putting you on the spot there, aren't I?
No, completely. I mean, I think we are in an environment where I think everywhere from starting from the very top vision of the nation and of Dubai,